Hello, witches. I am High Priestess Awesome Venus. I know that this is a very controversial topic. Can you do witchcraft if you have mental illness? Most people, even some witches, high priests, high priestesses, would say no. You should not do witchcraft if you have mental illness. As a high priestess myself, I disagree. I disagree with this notion that you can't do witchcraft if you have mental illness. Of course, you can do witchcraft if you have mental illness. Matter of fact, it may help your mental illness. Even therapists, psychologists, witches, high priests, high priestesses would tell you that doing witchcraft would make your mental illness worse. It will make your delusions even more believable, even more real. Those people need to go sit down and be quiet. Be quiet, because you're wrong. You're wrong. If you are a witch that has mental illness and you are on this broadcast or watching a replay, welcome. I am High Priestess Awesome Venus. This is a controversial topic and we are going to dive right into it. Mental illness is defined by something going on in your head that is making you unable to live in the real world like a normal person. It's stopping you from living your life to the fullest. But what happens if you are a witch and you have mental illness? Should you still be doing witchcraft if you have mental illness? Yes. Yes. You don't have to go check in with your therapist or a doctor or a psychologist and tell them that you are a witch and you also do witchcraft, because then they are going to dope you up with all kinds of medication that you can't even pronounce to keep you away from witchcraft, because they falsely, wrongly believe that they are doing you a favor by removing witchcraft that they perceive to be making your mental illness worse, when in actuality, witchcraft is making your mental illness better. It's actually getting rid of the mental illness. Yes. Yes, absolutely. If you are mentally ill, you can still do witchcraft. Of course. Of course. Because in my experience, helping witches who happen to have mental illness, it's actually, the mental illness has actually dissolved, gone, off the medication, off of being on medication for months, years, decades. How many years are you going to let yourself be on medication because you are depressed, or because you have clinical depression, or because you have bipolar? Maybe you should be a witch. Maybe you should be doing witchcraft, because it can very well slow down the progression of your mental illness or get rid of it completely. You know, being a witch is a different type of spirituality. Being a witch is not like being in covenant with those of the Abrahamic faith, Christian, Muslim, Jew. It's completely different from those, what I believe, false religions. They would tell you that it's demonic possession, it's demonic oppression. You need Jesus. You need to come at the church. You need to go to confession. You need to go to the altar. Just give your life to Jesus. Witches don't think that way. Witches do not think that way, because that's stupid. That's why. And yes, I'm saying that out loud, because as witches, we must always tell the truth and not sugarcoat anything. It's not wrong to call something stupid if it actually is stupid. It's stupid to call mental illness demonic possession or demonic oppression, because that is not what mental illness is. mental illness is not caused by a demon. It's not caused because you did not give your life to Jesus. It doesn't make any sense. It's stupid. Listen, call a spade a spade. If something is stupid, say the word stupid. Don't say silly or funny or goofy, trying to be nice. Call it what it is, which is stupid. Call a spade a spade. Keep it real. You can be a witch and also have mental illness. You are not excluded or looked down in the witch community because you are mentally struggling. You are still part of this community even though you have mental illness. It's not going to be held against you. You are not, and you should not, if you currently are, you are not going to be discriminated against or judged or mistreated or treated differently or treated with disdain or treated with disgust. No. If you are a witch that happens to be a member of a coven and you are struggling with your mental illness, talk to your high priest or your high priestess so that they can help you along. So they, the high priest, the high priestess, can go to the altar on the behalf of the coven's chosen god or goddess and ask that god or goddess to heal you, to relieve you of your mental illness. Mental illness is not, I just don't want to get out of bed. I just don't want to take a bath. I just want to sleep in. That's not mental illness. Mental illness affects almost, listen very carefully, almost your entire life. Almost. You just can't, your brain just won't let you function normally. But as a witch who does witchcraft, and you also happen to have mental illness, guess what? Among witches, you are still our equal. You are still our equal. We do not look down on anybody if you happen to be a witch. We do not look down on anybody if you happen to be a witch. It's just not tolerated. It's improper. And quite honestly, it is cruel. It is evil. The spells, rituals, hexes, and curses that you do, if you happen to also be mentally ill, can, and I've seen it happen over and over again, can dispel, get rid of, toss away the mental illness. If you find out who or what is the source of your mental illness, you can cast a spell to break its hold on your mental health. Absolutely. I've seen it happen, witches. I've seen it happen over and over again. Get to the source or the person or persons who is causing you mental anguish. And then you do a spell or ritual or reach out to a high priest or high priestess to get the help that you need from them or from your own chosen ancestor, god, goddess, familiar, or spirit animal to dispel, get rid of mental illness so that it cannot and won't even think about returning to the life of the witch. I found sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes doctors give you medication to sweep the problem underneath the rug instead of actually getting rid of the problem, getting rid of the mental illness and sending it on the way. Like when you get a cut, you have to clean the cut with properly hydrogen peroxide You can't just leave the cut. You can't just put a Band-Aid on a cut. You have to clean the cut and then put the Band-Aid on it. So a lot of times doctors, if they find out that you have mental illness, they will sweep it underneath the rug, give you some medication, say, oh, you will always have this problem. This will always affect you. I don't believe that. No witch, no high priest, no high priestess should ever accept that mental illness will always be part of your life. Your brain will always be against you. I don't believe that, because it's not true. It's not true. It's sometimes it's a way for a doctor to milk you for money, or to milk the health insurance company for money too. That is absolutely the truth. That absolutely does happen. That does. That is unfortunate, but that definitely happens. Those doctors are actually crooks. They're crooks. They're crooks. Get to the source. You don't have to tell me, but I'm pretty confident you know who or what is making your mental illness work. And a lot of times, let me say this, a lot of the time, witches, when you remove yourself from certain places or certain people, you realize that you did not take your medication that day, because you have removed yourself from that place or removed that person from your life. You realize that you were not actually mentally ill. It was the people and places that were making you ill. It was not your fault. It was not your brain. It was your brain being influenced by bad places and bad people. It was never actually you. This is not putting a blame on something or someone else. It's taking a blame off of you, because it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not. I know there are some witches here probably that have been on mental illness medication for years, for decades, and they still don't feel any better. And you're now tired of constantly over and over again changing your medication. You don't want to change your medication anymore. You just want to get rid of the mental illness. How many more years are you going to be on medication? That's the question that you need to seriously think about and ask yourself before when you lay down at bed at night. When you lay down at bed at night, ask yourself, if you are a witch that is going through mental illness, how many more years am I going to be on medication? How many times is my doctor going to change my medication? I don't want to change my medication anymore. I want to get rid of the mental illness. And witchcraft can do that. Witchcraft can absolutely help you if you have mental illness. Absolutely. Because witchcraft, by definition, by its very definition, is spirituality, but it's also very healing. A lot of mentally ill witches that I used to know way back in the day are no longer mentally ill because they perform witchcraft. They realized that their brain was just like everybody else's. It was the people and places they were around that was making them mentally ill. It was never their brain. It was never their brain. It was always other people and living a bad situation or a really bad situation or being around really bad people that was making their brain feel like it has a ton of bricks on it, that they can't function. Witchcraft can absolutely help you if you have mental illness. If you are a witch that has mental illness, you can still be a witch. You are still welcome in this community. You are still part of this community. You're not going to be excommunicated. You're not going to be excommunicated, all right? I got it. Just because your brain is a little itsy bitty tiny bit messed up. You're not excluded. You're not looked down upon. Witches don't do that. Witches do not do that. We don't. You can still be a witch if you have mental illness. Every time you do a spell, a ritual, a hex, or a curse, and after you have finished those things, you feel better. You feel like your brain is finally getting a breath of fresh air for the first time. That's how it's been described to me. That every time I've had a witch who was not anymore, though, very carefully to understand it, I had a witch that was mentally ill one time, and after they did a spell and really studying the craft, they told me just that. It feels like my brain has gotten a breath of fresh air for the first time ever. I've stopped taking my mental medication. I don't talk to that doctor anymore. I've changed doctors. I don't have the mental illness anymore ever since becoming a devotee of Aphrodite. Aphrodite has healed me, she told me. Aphrodite is the goddess of love. So maybe she also needs it, along with working with Aphrodite, also some self-love ritual, which is fine. Of course, you should love yourself before anybody else, because if you don't love yourself, nobody else is. Why should anybody love you if you don't love yourself? Loving yourself means, how would you treat yourself? How would you let somebody treat you? Or how would you respond if somebody is mistreating you? How are you going to get down? How are you going to stand up for yourself? How are you going to defend yourself? What are you going to do? You can still be a witch if you have mental illness. Having mental illness does not disqualify you for being a witch. Let me say that again. Being a witch with mental illness does not disqualify you as being a witch. A witch is a witch is a witch, even a witch that has mental illness. As long as your mental illness does not spill out into the world where it is causing disturbances to other people, yeah, you can be treated. And that treatment, very often in my personal experience, has been witchcraft. Witchcraft is working with the energy found in nature to bring about real, significant, and permanently positive change. So many witches that I've met who has mental illness just needed to get out into nature. Now listen, I am from New York, so I'm surrounded by skyscrapers. But New York does have its luxurious and luscious and beautiful parks and forests, especially upstate near Canada, upstate New York. Their forests and wooded areas are gorgeous, especially near Niagara Falls. It's gorgeous. So a lot of those witches just needed to get back into nature, just needed to do witchcraft in nature rather than their own homes. Because witchcraft is working with the energy found in nature to bring about real, significant, and permanently positive change in the witch's life, so they no longer go through life the hard way like everybody else who unfortunately is not a witch, which is not our problem. If you want to change your life for the better permanently, so that you would not want to go back to your old life, do witchcraft. If you are a witch who is mentally ill, doing witchcraft is not going to make your mental illness worse. Don't listen to these priests and high priestesses and therapists and psychologists. They are not real high priests. They are not real high priestesses. They are not real doctors. They are not real therapists. They are not real psychologists. I'm telling you, as a high priestess myself, I have beared witness with you. Listen, I have beared witness to witches dispelling, getting rid of entirely their supposed or what they believe to be mental illness. You know, I'm famous for saying this. Before you diagnose yourself for mental illness, make sure that you are not just surrounded by assholes. Maybe you are just surrounded by assholes and they are giving you the mental illness. It's not you, it's them. It's them, not you. Take the blame off of yourself. Stop saying my brain is so fucked up. Stop saying that. It's not. It's not. Your brain is fine. Your brain is no different than my own. Especially if you are a witch. Especially if you are a witch. Especially. If you are a witch with mental illness on top of that, it's not wrong to do witchcraft. As long as you can tell the difference from reality and fantasy, you're free to do any type of spell, ritual, hex, or curse. The only time you should definitely not ever do witchcraft is when you cannot tell the difference from reality and fantasy. If you are telling me that there is a dinosaur or Godzilla or King Kong in the room with us, that's not witchcraft. That is mental illness. You know just as much as I do, there is no such thing as dinosaurs anymore. A gorilla does not grow to be 50 feet tall. You can do witchcraft as long as you can tell the difference from reality and fantasy, and it does not interfere with your real life. So I had to come on here and talk about this extensively and tell witches who happen to be going through mental illness that just because you are mentally ill does not dismiss you as also being a witch, and to tell witches the truth that you can still do witchcraft if you are mentally ill, and that witchcraft may very well help the mental illness or get rid of the mental illness entirely. So I know this broadcast is going to help lots and lots of witches. Be sure to share this broadcast in your stories or in your other social media platforms. Tell them that there is a high priestess here in New York. My name is High Priestess Autumn Phoenix, who is anointed and appointed by the Queen of Witches, Hecate, to be a voice for witches who have ears to hear and hands to receive Hecate's best. So thank you, witches, for joining me for this pop-up live broadcast. I now release you into your evening. Bye, everyone.